I really think the Rockets are going to be the reason the Lakers don't meet the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals, and I don't think it'll be because of James Harden. To be honest, I think if it's going to come down to one player in that series, I think it'll be Russell Westbrook, the only player in the NBA to average a triple double for 3 straight seasons, and everyone just still treats it like it's normal. How you guys doing? It is currently July 19th, 2020 out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I was going to talk about Russell Westbrook, who is currently a 31-year-old point guard for the Houston Rockets. And just to get a little bit into his background, he's usually basically the man in OKC. He was drafted into a franchise that was able to draft Kevin Durant a year before him and James Harden a year after him. All three of those players are members of this elite, of the elite, my list. They're only together for 3 years before they completely disband and they each went their own way. Russell Westbrook was the last one left in OKC, and in his last 3 seasons in OKC, he's shown why he's one of the best players that has ever played all time. To me, I think he has to win a championship and maybe another MVP to be officially GOATed. But to me, with everything he's been able to do up until this point, I see there's no way he doesn't become a Hall of Famer. And this is a player that if you want to watch, if there's a team other than the Bucks, the Lakers, or the Clippers to watch, I'm telling you, Russell Wilson makes the Rockets a watchable team in the playoffs. So to give you a little bit of background, he came up in Long Beach. He came up in Long Beach area, grew up in LA. He's 31 years old. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, and the best way I can describe his playing style is just like move out the way. He's definitely the best pound for pound athlete in the league. He's incredibly strong. He's very fast. He's very physical, and it shows in his game. On offense, he can get criticized a lot for taking a lot of shots, just like James Harden would, especially when he was on OKC, when he was the only All-Star on that team for a bit, and even when he did have All-Stars. People will say that Russ is looking for extra rebounds when he was averaging a triple-double for 3 straight seasons, but then I'll tell them, hey, you go average 30 points and a triple-double in the regular season, and then tell me what you have to do to get it. Okay, that's what I thought. So just to give you a bit of background, like I said, came up through LA, ended up going to UCLA, pretty much staying in the city, coached under Ben Howland. And in his first 2 years there, he was able to get UCLA to the Final Four in both the seasons that he was there. In his 2018 season, he made the Pac-10 All-Defensive Team. He was named to the 3rd team All-Pac-10, and he was named the Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year in 2008. And following his 2 seasons at UCLA, I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder were willing to take a chance on him in the lottery. And at that point, right before the draft, during the draft, they were the Seattle Supersonics. But that season, they would go on to play their first games in Oklahoma City. As during his rookie season, Russell Westbrook was named to the first team All-Rookie for playing 65 games, for starting 65 of the 82 games that season. He assumed a starting role within his 18th game, it looks like, when he started as a 20-year-old. He averaged 15 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and over a steal a game, shooting 39.8% from the field, 27% from 3, and 81% from the free throw line. And in that season, the Thunder would go from 20 wins to 23 wins. Following Kevin Durant's Rookie of the Year season is where Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were starting to find their way within the West. This was the only season. This was the one of 2 seasons that Russell Westbrook was in OKC in which they didn't make the playoffs, which is still an impressive feat. But this would lead into his 2009-2010 season, where already Russell Westbrook had proven to be one of the better rookies of the class, but he was wanting a little bit more. And after they got James Harden, they were kind of more full of a team. He would go on to start all 82 games for the first time in his career at age 21 for the OKC Thunder. He would go on to finish with 16 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists on the season while slashing 42 from the field, 22 from 3, 78% from the free throw line, in a season where the OKC Thunder eventually clinched the playoffs. And After finishing 13th in the West the year before, they finished 8th in the West with a 50-32 record. They would eventually get bounced in the first round by Kobe's Lakers. In 6, Scott Brooks was named the Coach of the Year in his very first year there. And at that point, Russell Westbrook, he wasn't an all-star yet, but with averaging 16, 5, and 8, while still averaging over a steal, was definitely starting to get noticed. And as the Thunder were starting to be a playoff team, people started to recognize that Russ was one of the big players on this team. In 2010, 2011, he would go on to start all 82 games for the OKC Thunder in a season where they would go on to finish 4th in the West, 4th in the Northwest. During the season, Russell Westbrook would finish averaging 22 points, 4.6 assists, 8.2 assists, and nearly 2 steals a game, all while shooting 44% from the field, 33% from 3, and 84% from the free throw line. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the very first time in his career, and for the first time, he'll be named to NBA's all-second team as one of the top 10 players in all of basketball by his age 22 season. And the OKC Thunder that year would end up going to beat the Nuggets in the first round in 5. They beat the Grizzlies in the semifinals in 7. They would end up losing to the Mavericks in the conference finals in his third year there, in the season where the Dallas Mavericks ended up beating the Miami Heat in the finals as well, just to show how strong that Dallas Mavericks team was. And at this point, by his age 23 season, Russell Westbrook had proven himself to be one of the better players in the NBA by not only being an all-star, but by being a second-team All-NBA player, by being known as one of the 10 best players in the NBA, voted on by the NBA voters by age 23. So going on into that season, in his age 23 season for the OKC Thunder, Russell Westbrook would go on and start all 66 games in a season where he would be the All-Star for the second time in his first 4 years in the league. In that season, the Thunder would go on to finish second in the entire West with a 47-19 record in the shortened season. And during that season, Russell Westbrook would go on to average 23.6 points per game, the most points he's averaged up until that point. He averaged 4.6 rebounds, 5.5 assists, shooting 46% from the field, 32% from 3, 83% from the free throw line. He would go on to be named to the All-NBA second team for the second time in his career, in addition to being named an All-Star. So at this point, it wasn't a fluke that he was a second-team All-NBA, and by his 4th year in the league, he had established himself as at least a top 10 player in the league. And it wasn't a fluke the first time because he had won it multiple times. The Thunder then were to go and they were to lose to the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals after sweeping the Mavericks in the first round, the Mavericks team that had won the finals the previous year. They ended up being Kobe's Lakers when they were in the heat of their prime. They ended up beating them 4-1. They ended up beating the Spurs 4-2 in 6, and they ended up losing to the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals after Kevin Durant won the All-Star Game MVP and James Harden won the Sixth Man of the Year. This is the last year that James Harden was in OKC as well. But up until this point, Russ, KD, and James Harden were known as a top trio in the league for years to come. But since the Thunder wouldn't start James Harden decided to go a different avenue and go to Houston, leaving KD and Russ there with a younger core just to try to see what they would do and see how they would grow as their careers grew with them. But up until then, Russell Westbrook and KD were already a tag team, already known as 2 of the best 10 players in the league, and they would only get better. And this would lead into his age 24 season. In 2013, where he would start all 82 games in a season where the OKC Thunder would finish with 60 wins in the season, the only time that the Thunder had the best record in the West while he was there. That season, Russell Westbrook would be named an All-Star for the 3rd time in his 5-year career, 3 years in a row. He would finish with 23.2 points, 5.2 rebounds, 7.4 assists, shooting 44% from the field, 32% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. That season, he was eventually named to his 3rd All-NBA second team, in addition to being named an All-Star for the 3rd year in a row. They would go on to make the playoffs with 60 wins. They would go on to beat the Rockets in the very first round with James Harden as their new star. They would go on to lose to the Grizzlies in the very next round when they actually had a chance of going head to head with the Miami Heat in the finals. They weren't able to make it there. But Russell Westbrook did a really, really good job this season, and he had set himself up to being recognized as one of the league's best players. That was by age 24. His age 25 season, Russell Westbrook would only start in 46 games in a season where the OKC Thunder would finish second in the West and eventually lose to the Spurs in the conference finals. Kevin Durant won the MVP this year, and Russ would go on and not make the playoffs because he missed the first chunk of the season. Russ would go on to average 22 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 6.9 assists, and almost 2 steals per game in those 46 games. But up until that point, even though he didn't make the All-Star game, he was still recognized as one of the league's best, and he still had 3 All-Stars within his first 3 years. And in this season, I mean, they made it to the conference finals for the 3rd time in Russell Westbrook's career and KD's career as a duo. And in the next year, 2014-15, while KD was hurt that year, Russell Westbrook ended up starting all 67 games for the OKC Thunder in a season where they finished 9th in the West and completely missed the playoffs. During that season, Russ was named an All-Star and an All-Star Game MVP as he came back from his year when he didn't play the full season. He went on to lead the league with 28 points per game. He ended up averaging 7.3 rebounds and 8.6 assists, averaging 2.1 steals per game, the most he's ever averaged in his career, all while shooting 42% from the field, 30% from 3, and 83% from the field. And in that season, he would eventually go on to be named to his 4th NBA second team, being recognized as a top 10 player in the league yet again. And this is the first time he had been named a scoring champion. But even though the Thunder didn't make the playoffs this year, Russell Westbrook had eased right back into the role where he found himself before, whereas since the age he was 22, he's been one of the top 10 players in the NBA, and it's shown up until then, his 4th consecutive complete season of being one of the NBA's best. And even though they didn't make the playoffs, it would lead into his age 27 season, where in 2015-16, Russell Westbrook would start 80 games in a season in which the Thunder would finish 3rd in the West in their last season with KD on the team. They would go on to finish with 55 wins in a season in which Russell Westbrook finished averaging 23.5 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 10.4 assists a game. His very first season where he's averaged a triple-double. He shot 45% from the field, 29% from 3, and he ended up shooting 81% from the field. And once again this season, Russell Westbrook started to take on an identity of his own. He would go on to be named a first-team All-NBA player for the very first time in his career. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the 5th time in his 8-year career. And he would be named an All-Star MVP for the second back-to-back season. The OKC Thunder would go on to the playoffs with the 3rd best record in the West. They would beat the Mavericks in the first round in 5, with Billy Donovan as their coach for the first time. They would go on to beat the Spurs in the semifinals with Kawhi, beat them in 6, and they would go on to lose to the Warriors in the conference finals after being up originally 3-2. But at this point, this is when KD and Russ were at their strongest together. But after this loss, and after the Golden State Warriors had lost to LeBron while LeBron was playing in Cleveland, Kevin Durant had decided to join the Golden State Warriors, leaving Russell Westbrook behind in OKC. And up until that point, right before KD left, Russell Westbrook was a 5-time All-Star in his first 8 years in the league. He'd already led the league in points the 1 year that KD was out. In KD's last season, Russ had averaged 23.5 points, near 8 rebounds, and over 10 assists a game, as the Thunder were quite literally one game away from being the best team in the West. And eventually KD joined the Warriors, making the Warriors a lot stronger and making them basically just solidifying their chances to win the NBA title. Russell Westbrook stayed in OKC, and in the very next year, in 2016-17, he'd have his best season to date, where he would start all 81 games for the Oklahoma City Thunder in a season where they would finish sixth in the West, with a 47-35 record without KD, with Russ as their sole best player, their sole elite player. In that season, he would finish leading the league in points for the second year in his career, averaging 31.6 points. He averaged 10.7 rebounds, 10.4 assists, averaging over a steal and a half per game. He shot 42.5% from the field on making 10.2 out of 24 averaged attempts. He shot 34% from three. He made 85% of his free throws. And in addition to being named a first-team All-NBA player, he was named the MVP of the league in 2016-2017 after being the first player since Oscar Robertson to average a triple-double for the season. And he still led the league in points while doing so. And he was also named an All-Star for the sixth time in his first 9 seasons in the NBA. And after finishing sixth in the West, the Thunder would lose in the first round 4-1 to the Houston Rockets. But this was the point at which Russell Westbrook was at the top of his pedestal. And at that point, by his age 29 season, he had played 9 seasons in the NBA, starting when he was 20 years old after being one of the Pac-10's best defensive players. He has been named to 6 All-Star games in that time. He was named to the All-NBA second team 3 times, and he was named to the All-NBA second team 4 times, and he was named to the All-NBA first team twice. By that time, it was no fluke. He had averaged a triple-double, something that one other person in NBA history had ever done, and at that point, he was at the very top. But this would continue into his age 29 season. In 27-18, Russell Westbrook would start 80 games in a season where the Oklahoma City Thunder would finish with 48 wins, with the 4th best record in the West. This season, Russell Westbrook was named to yet another All-Star game. This would be his 7th in his career at this point, while averaging 36 minutes a game and averaging 21 attempted shots. He would go on to average 25.4 points per game. He would average 10.1 assists per game, the second time in NBA history he's averaged 10 or double-digit rebounds, and he averaged 10.3 assists, leading the league, the second time that he's ever averaged a triple-double in a season. First NBA player ever to do it in back-to-back seasons, and at this point, Russell Westbrook was still proven to be one of the best players the NBA had ever seen. He shot 45% from the field, 30% from 3, and 74% from the free throw line. And he was then named to the All-NBA second team for the 5th time in his career. He was then, in addition to being named an All-Star for the 7th year in the past 8 seasons, and the one season he didn't, he didn't play that season up until then. The Thunder that season would go in finish by losing to the Jazz, losing in the first round 4-2. And in the next year, in 2018-19, Westbrook's last season in OKC, he started 73 games in a season where the OKC Thunder finished 6th in the West with a 49-33 record. This season, he would end up making an All-Star game for the 5th time in a row and for the 8th time in 9 seasons. He would go on to average 22.9 points per game, 11.1 rebounds, and he would lead the league in assists with 10.7 assists for the 2nd year in a row. His 3rd year in a row in which he averaged a triple-double for his career. He shot 43% from the field, 29% from 3, and he shot 66% from the free throw line. And the Thunder would go on to lose to the Trailblazers in the first round. And following that summer, at that point, by the time Russell Westbrook was entering his age 31 season, he's led the league in scoring twice, once while KD was there and once while he wasn't. He's led the league in assists twice. He's averaged a triple-double for 3 straight seasons, something that no NBA player has ever come close to doing. and he won the MVP the very first time he did it. So if you look at a player such as Russell Westbrook, considering right now he's 31 and he's had so much NBA played behind him, he has a lot of good NBA in front of him. He was eventually traded to the Houston Rockets this season, and now he sits in the starting lineup with James Harden, Eric Gordon, Robert Covington, and PJ Tucker, in a team that's currently ranked 6th in the West and could actually do a good amount of damage considering they're slotted to play against the Nuggets. And even in this season, in the 53 games that he started this season, Westbrook secured his 9th All-Star game while averaging 27.5 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, shooting 47.4% from the field, the best he's ever shot. He's shooting 25% from 3, one of the worst seasons he's ever shot. He's also shooting 77% from the free throw line. And in addition to all that, so like and right now, with the rest of the season still yet to be played because they made the playoffs, this is a player that's sitting on being one of the best Pac-12 or Pac-10 players while he was there. He went on to lead the league in scoring and assists twice. He was named to the All-NBA third team once. He was named to the All-NBA second team 5 times. And he was named to the All-NBA first team 7 times. So that just shows you that 7 times in his first 12 seasons, he was recognized as at least a top 10 player in the NBA. He played in Oklahoma City Thunder, and at first James Harden left, and it was him and KD, and then KD left. It was just Russ, and when Russ was left, he was definitely one of the best players in the NBA, but at that point he realized that he had to be on a team with another good player for him to actually have a chance of winning a title while still in his prime. I like the move to go to Houston. I like the fact that he gets to team up with an old teammate that he got to grow with together. To me, Russell Westbrook's career is one of the more impressive ones in the history of the NBA, especially in my lifetime. Not many NBA players can say they've done Russell Westbrook is the only player in NBA history to say that he's averaged a triple-double for 3 straight seasons in the NBA, at least right now. He has so much more to his resume, add on to the fact that he was an 8-time, he was named to the All-Star 8, it was All-NBA 8 times. He was an All-Star MVP twice. And I mean, this is just Russell Westbrook we're talking about. When it's all said and done, he's going to go to the Hall because people are going to remember his most elite MVP season. But if you ever get a chance, just check on my boy Russell Westbrook. I really appreciate you for listening to all 22 minutes of this. I hope you get to see Russell Westbrook for the true animal and for the true amazing basketball player that he is, because he's very brilliant when you really get to see him for what he does. But if you ever get a chance to watch my boy Russ, he wears number 0 for the Houston Rockets, a team that's going to be in the playoffs this year. And when you watch him, I want you to really just ask yourself, is anyone else on the court doing as much as Russell Westbrook? Really? And with that, I think I've said my piece on Russ, so peace out.